I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman, and today I'm continuing with the Shallow Grave series. This is part 3. And the last time that I left you, Roy McLaughlin Jr. had sued several people in Bloody Angola for an alleged beating incident that occurred after his third attempt at escape. And when that dust settled, 3 correctional officers were found guilty, and Roy had won what turned out to be an $8,000 settlement. So I may mention that while I was researching this case, one of the correctional officers, Mark Sharp, this was not his first rodeo with getting in some legal trouble. So in January of 2011, a 15-year-old girl who lived on the Beeline, where the families live, right, unexpectedly gives birth. And an investigation obviously gets started because of this. And following that investigation, Mark Sharp is arrested and charged with felony carnal knowledge of a juvenile. Now, in March of 2013, he pleads no contest to that charge, which essentially meant he would avoid a trial, but he would accept the legal consequences of his actions. In April of 2013, he is sentenced to 5 years in prison, with 2 of those years suspended. So essentially, 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and he was ordered to pay a little over $24,000 to compensate the family for expenses incurred as a result of that childbirth. Now, if you're curious how they were able to confirm he was the father, DNA evidence confirmed him as the father pretty much beyond the shadow of any doubt. So let's get back to McLaughlin, because even after winning that lawsuit against the correctional officers, Roy, he was not done with lawsuits. And just this year, in March of 2025, Roy McLaughlin Jr., he was at it again. And this time he was alleging a violation of his 8th Amendment, which is cruel and unusual punishment. And you're not going to believe this one. I happen to have it in front of me, and here is how this craziness reads. And it's Roy McLaughlin Jr. versus, and I can't even pronounce this guy's first name, so we're going to say T. Tolliver, Robert Wright, Amy Matthews, and a Jane Doe he knew as Lieutenant Lannis or Lanus. And he's requesting a trial by jury. Now, what could it be for, you may ask? Well, we go to the claims of relief, and it says, violations of the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment by their policies, practices described herein, defendants were and are acting with deliberate indifference and has intentionally disregarded excessive risk to the plaintiff's health from the exposure to copious levels of environmental tobacco smoke. And then he has in parentheses, secondhand smoke. The practices outlined herein subjected plaintiff to substantial risk of serious harm and injury. Secondhand smoke, y'all. He's in prison, mind you. He's going to sue for this. So he kind of gets into detail with what he's suing about. It says, inmates are microwaving and burning illicit drugs and also contraband, being wet tobacco to dry same for smoking. This practice is done often and emits a poisonous gas from the nicotine, permitting from the death row unit F tier. During July of 2024, Roy McLaughlin Jr., which he's writing this himself, was on the death row unit recreational yard and took advantage of an opportunity to inform management T. Tolliver regarding the illicit drug trafficking by death row inmate orderlies. Plaintiff believed that Tolliver would act to secure a safe and healthy environment and encourage other LSP staff members to do the same. However, she took no action. Illicit drug trafficking by death row inmate orderlies and other contraband, microwaving and burning illicit drugs and wet tobacco, and he's got in parentheses dip, to dry out some for smoking by inmates on the tier had been going on for months prior to the plaintiff informing Tolliver on July of 2024, even though Tolliver was well aware of the issues. During the period of time stated above, Tolliver was acting as the administrative secretary to Camp F Death Row Unit Warden Chad Darbone. Plaintiff asserts that the microwaving of the illicit drugs and wet tobacco was and continues to be so constant and pervasive, the poisonous gas emitted permeates through the entire tier and the death row unit, causing LSP personnel to close the F tier's door hatch to partially suppress the poisonous gas and its smell, especially during tours and visitors being present. All of the defendants are sued in their individual capacity and acted under color of state law. Defendants, Colonel Robert Wright, Captain Amy Matthews, and Lieutenant Lannis, have known about the illicit drug trafficking by death row inmate orderlies and other contraband for many months, including microwaving and burning illicit drugs and wet tobacco to dry same for smoking by inmates on the death row tier. Plaintiff has been and is being exposed to an extreme degree of secondhand smoke and burning of illicit drugs, making plaintiff especially vulnerable to the smoke medically because of the plaintiff's allergies and being 67 years of age. The extreme degree of exposure to secondhand smoke and burning of illicit drugs have caused the plaintiff medical issues, eye irritation, painful sore throat, coughing, sneezing, and difficulty breathing. Smoke inhalation may be life-threatening. Plaintiff mailed defendant Tolliver a letter dated November 12th of 2024 by placing it into the prison mailbox on the death row F tier. The letter referenced verbatim, quote, attempt to resolve sensitive issue with respondent. Plaintiff stated in part verbatim that the administrative remedy procedure states in part offenders are encouraged to resolve their problems within the institution informally before instituting a formal process. Communication with the appropriate staff member is encouraged. At approximately 9:40 a.m. on November 13th of 2024, defendant Robert Wright approached the plaintiff at his cell on the F tier, wanting to know what the letter plaintiff had written to defend Tolliver was about. Defendant Wright's hands were trembling as he was in full fear, attempting to intimidate plaintiff, stating verbatim, I'm going to turn this letter over to the investigative services. Plaintiff replied verbatim, I want you to do that. Plaintiff was following Louisiana law and Department of Corrections policy, thus causing the plaintiff to sense that the defendant, Colonel Robert Wright, was having an inappropriate sexual relationship with defendant Tolliver, a female. 16th of November, plaintiff mailed an administrative remedy policy dated November 14th of 2024 to the LSP warden designee, placing it in the prison mailbox. On November 20th, the plaintiff submitted a medical request complaining of eye irritation, sore throat, coughing, sneezing, and difficulty breathing due to an extreme degree of exposure to the environmental tobacco smoke. i.e. secondhand smoke and the burning of illegal drugs. The plaintiff's complaint was accepted on November 19th, 2024. On November 21st, 2024, at approximately noontime, Defendant Tolliver and Defendant Lieutenant Lannis arrived at the plaintiff's housing unit. Tolliver asked the plaintiff verbatim, quote, "Do you want to talk to me?" Plaintiff responded verbatim, "Yes, meet with me on the yard at 2 o'clock. The defendant, Tolliver and Lannis, arrived and met with the plaintiff on the rec yard at approximately 2:15 p.m. Sergeant Veal was a recreation yard guard and witnessed the meeting between the plaintiff and the defendants. Plaintiff spoke first, stating, quote, "This is about illegal drug trafficking." Defendant Lannis opened her eyes very wide, clearly shaken by the plaintiff's statement, and stated verbatim, "I don't know why I would know anything about that." And Lannis scurried away after approximately 1 minute, never returning, leaving Defendant Tolliver alone with the plaintiff. Defendant Lannis was deliberately indifferent to hearing any further concerns from the plaintiff.
Jim, did you see what happened in Texas today?
Wait, before you tell me that, let me tell you what happened in New York.
It cannot be as crazy as the case I told you about yesterday in Louisiana.
You know what? We should do a podcast about it.
And with that, we did. Crime Wire Weekly covers the crime news headlines that have dominated the week.
We cover trending crimes from all over the country and even sprinkle in a few globally.
Crime Wire Weekly is available now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Simply by searching Crime Wire Weekly or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. Defendant Tolliver stated, "Colonel Wright has seen me reading your letter to me and took it from me. He doesn't want me to talk to you, but I told him I was going to talk to you today." Plaintiff then stated to Defendant Tolliver that he had to mention her back in July regarding the illicit drug trafficking by death row orderlies and notified her that the microwaving of the wet tobacco and illicit drugs had a bad medical injury to the plaintiff and will continue to do so if it's not abated. Plaintiff told Tolliver, "Your boy," and then he has in parentheses Defendant Wright, "is distracted by his sexual relationship with you and doesn't want to be bothered with the plaintiff's concerns." Plaintiff and Tolliver spoke for approximately 35 minutes. All of the defendants were aware of the problematic concerns the plaintiff alluded to in his complaint many months before filing and took no action to fix it. Plaintiff was taken to the death row clinic and was seen by medical personnel, Robert Bordelon, who, upon plaintiff verbally complaining to Bordelon regarding eye irritation, sore throat, coughing, sneezing, and difficulty breathing caused by extreme exposure to secondhand smoke, and Bordelon stated verbatim, quote, "They need to lock these inmates up. I'll order you some eye drops." A few hours after the plaintiff's visit to the clinic on November 22nd of 2024, Defendant Wright, Major Morrow, and Sergeant Veal made rounds at approximately 9:15 a.m. However, Wright didn't acknowledge nor speak to the plaintiff. On November 23rd and 24th, plaintiff witnessed illicit drug trafficking at the F-Tier's entrance door hatch by death row inmate orderlies, commonly referred to as Junior. On November 24th of 2024, plaintiff received his prescription for Good Sense Artificial Tears Lubricant Eye Drops. On November 23rd of 2024, it was prescribed by Robert Bordelon. Plaintiff witnessed illicit drug trafficking on November 26th and 27th through the F-Tier's entrance door hatch by Junior, the orderly. This activity had been occurring for many months prior to the plaintiff filing his complaint and continued with all the defendants witnessing it. However, the defendant's MO was to ignore the issues, thus appearing to operate a lawful and DOC policy-run unit at death row at Louisiana State Prison. On November 26th, the plaintiff was on the rec yard when defendants Wright and Tolliver arrived, making rounds, and didn't acknowledge nor speak to the plaintiff, who was standing 10 feet away. Now, why in the fuck would he feel like they needed to acknowledge or speak to him? What an arrogant sumbitch, even at his age. Plaintiff asserts that the wet tobacco is being sold by death row inmates, orderlies, and delivered to inmates on the tier by orderlies and LSP staff personnel, and is considered contraband on the F tier. Plaintiff asserts that on November 29th, 2024, at approximately 10:15 a.m., Lieutenant Martinez, supposedly a cousin to defendant Tolliver, arrived at the plaintiff's cell and stated verbatim, "I've got a bone to pick with you." Plaintiff then stated, "What?" Lieutenant Martinez stated, "Tolliver, you hurt her feelings." Lieutenant Martinez then walked off and the plaintiff pondered. Quote, "Very typical." Defendant Tolliver expressed her feelings to Martinez regarding the plaintiff's complaints. He goes on to say all the defendants are deliberately indifferent to the plaintiff's acute discomfort, Louisiana statutes regarding illegal drugs and smoking, plaintiff's injury, and Department of Correction policy regarding secondhand smoke. Plaintiff asserts that no smoking signs are on the tier, but they were painted over more than 5 months prior to March 1st of 2025 and have not been repainted, which is a Louisiana statutory violation. On November 10th of 2024, defendant Robert Wright made rounds on the F tier, and plaintiff stated verbatim to Wright, quote, "I'm not opposed to dropping my complaint if you'll take my allegations seriously." Defendant Wright walked off without verbally engaging with the plaintiff. Defendant Captain Amy Matthews is a daytime shift supervisor at the death row unit and is deliberately indifferent to the secondhand smoke, illicit drug trafficking by death row inmate orderlies, and the microwaving of wet tobacco and burning of illicit drugs, causing the plaintiff to be exposed to an extreme degree of environmental smoke. Matthews is deliberately indifferent to the plaintiff's risk harm. Plaintiff asserts that Lieutenant Harrison, who is the subordinate correctional officer to defendant Captain Amy Matthews on their shift, told the plaintiff he was having sex with Matthews regularly, and her focus was to get into his pocket, not on smoke. Plaintiff received the complaint number and the first step response form dated December 12th of 2024, prepared by Warden Megan Shipley. Plaintiff asserts that defendant Tolliver and Wright's responses to the plaintiff's complaint are the first official documented lies regarding these matters. Defendant Tolliver stated in part verbatim, "At no time was she aware of the drug trafficking by you, defendant Roy McLaughlin, nor was she made aware of any complaints of illegal drugs or tobacco by offenders on any tiers." Defendant Wright stated in his response verbatim, quote, "At no time has he ever been a correctional officer that allowed any kind of drug trafficking throughout his career, and at no time did he ever intimidate you or any other offender." Plaintiff asserts that defendant Tolliver and Wright had no response, choosing to ignore the plaintiff's assertion that the two defendants had been in an inappropriate employee relationship. How the fuck you like him, whether it's appropriate or not? Who is this guy to judge anybody? It's wild. Inappropriate sexual relationship. The failure to respond by defendants is very telling, and common sense is appropriate in this regard. Defendant Wright is distracted by the much younger female. Thus, Wright is woefully improficient in his duties mandated to the administrator, a healthy, safe, and secure environment for the plaintiff. The plaintiff asserts that all of the defendants are woefully improficient in their duties and mandated to administrator a healthy, safe, and secure environment for the plaintiff as it pertains to exposure to secondhand smoke, microwaving of tobacco, etc. He repeats that every freaking sentence. On December 18th of 2024, death row orderly known as Junior passed contraband through the F tier's door hatch. This violation is often done with the knowledge of the defendants. On December 18th of 2024, plaintiff mailed his second step in the complaint process to the Secretary of Public Safety and Department of Corrections, indicating the plaintiff's dissatisfaction with the complaint first step response form. On December 27th, 2024, defendant Lieutenant Lannis escorted inmate Castro into the F tier, wherein the extreme degree of microwave tobacco permeated throughout the F tier. And the defendant said nothing nor did anything to abate or discipline the offender. On December 28th of 2024, plaintiff asserts death row inmate orderlies passed and dropped contraband throughout the F tier hatch 2 times. On December 30th of 2024, plaintiff addressed and mailed a letter to the prison's mail system to defendants Tolliver and Wright and plaintiff, stating in part, verbatim, myself and Louisiana taxpayers expect you to enforce and follow applicable federal and state laws, especially as it pertains to the death row unit. I'm happy he spoke up for us Louisiana taxpayers. On November 23rd, 24th, 25th, and 26th, inmate Jr. passed contraband through the tray hatch and microwaving of tobacco occurred too. On December 6th and 18th, Jr. passed contraband through the tray hatch again. After shift change on December 18th, 19th, 25th, and 26th, the sergeant allowed an inmate to make an ice run. However, a lot of microwaving of tobacco occurs between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. Doing so emits a poisonous gas and is a serious health issue. On February 3rd of 2025, plaintiff had the opportunity to speak with defendant Wright at approximately 10 a.m. on death row unit's rec yard. Wright was accompanied by Lieutenant Colonel Bass, and plaintiff stated to Wright verbatim, quote, tobacco is being microwaved a lot after shift change. Wright responded, I'll take the microwave off the F tier after shift change. Defendant Wright did not remove the microwave as stated above. Plaintiff asserts that before plaintiff began notifying defendant rollover during July of 2024 regarding death row inmates' illicit drug trafficking, the same thing had been occurring along with microwaving wet tobacco, in the same fucking sentence he repeats 100 times. At approximately 10:40 a.m. on February 21st of 2025, a young African-American woman delivered a pack of red-colored anesthetic lozenges per plaintiff's request for medical treatment. Plaintiff had submitted on February 19th, 2025 regarding secondhand smoke. Plaintiff attests that on February 21st, defendant Lannis escorted the food cart into the F tier at 3:45 p.m. Minutes earlier, an inmate had microwaved wet tobacco and smoke, and the smell permeated throughout. Defendant stated verbatim, quote, shit, I can't breathe. Defendant took no action regarding disciplining the inmate and stated verbatim, I need to get off this tier. Plaintiff attests that on February 22nd, 23rd of 2025, the smoke from the freaking secondhand smoke he won't shut the hell up about permeated through the tier. At approximately 11:50, defendant Colonel Robert Wright made rounds of the F tier and stated as he was walking, quote, I smell smoke. Plaintiff attests to documenting a chronological tabulation indicating more than 100 times wet tobacco was microwaved on the F tier. Burning of illicit drugs occurred on the F tier, and a lot of contraband was passed through the F tier. Plaintiff attests that on March 1st of 2025, no one from investigative services had interviewed the plaintiff regarding the problematic violations stated above. Even though the defendant Wright told the plaintiff verbatim, I'm going to turn this letter over to investigative services. Plaintiff attests that all 4 defendants are aiding and abetting the illegal activity. Misrepresentation of a felony is occurring, and he believes that 3 of the 4 defendants are residents in the state of Mississippi and routinely crossing state lines. And all defendants are sued in their individual capacity and acting under state law. And he signed this the 3rd of March of 2025. So all of that to bitch about 2 people who, obviously this is just allegations, but we're screwing on the tier, 2 guards, and some secondhand freaking tobacco smoke. Can you believe it? This is where the tax dollars are going, people. So this case kind of goes on March 17th. He amends the complaint. He eventually had found out the correct name of one of the people he was suing, and he amended the complaint to reflect that. But when it was all said and done, surprisingly, on May 30th of 2025, he actually requests the case be dismissed. Not quite sure what happened there, but he claimed that a new warden took over on that death row tier and said they were going to fix everything, so he's agreed to request the dismissal of the lawsuit. And there, folks, the unbelievable thing is taxpayers are paying for all these bullshit lawsuits like this. It is absolutely infuriating to me. And at this point in time, 67-year-old Roy McLaughlin Jr., wife murderer, done all these things, and all he's got to do is sit behind the wire and sue people. And we pay for it. You gotta love it. So there you have it. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to end this Roy McLaughlin Jr. case. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon, commercial-free early releases and more. Patreon.com/Bloody Angola podcast. Next week, I'm going to bring you something completely brand new that does not involve this asshole. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman for Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang or Angola.